Hey everybody, let's go ahead and get started. We've all had a great night and day so far. Oh, it's still freezing here. I think yesterday we got coldest it's ever been in Houston since the 90s, and it's still pretty cold. But I think I'll make it through. And I forgot to go ahead and open up Sharp. Guess I should also open my other code editors. Mods. And we probably all need our hexagon diagram, I'm sure. I'm gonna open that up. Okay. I think we're all ready to go. So we were working on subdivisions, and I think that's where I'll continue. Most of the problems is just because we need to change the way that some of this data is passed around. Let's just start at the beginning. The Mesh Blueprint Builder just needs to know the chunk index. Okay, so this would actually change because number of rows and number of columns should now just be the chunk size plus 2. Yeah. They don't really even need to separate it out. Well, I guess in case I ever separate them, but for now it's always just going to be the chunk size. Then we'll have start row, which would be something like the chunk index times the database size. This is not exactly correct, is it? So I guess this will be num chunk rows is or this is actually the columns. Is equal to the board layer size divided by chunk size. And so now this is up in there. It's the chunk index. Remainder from chunk columns, so it's just like how we used to do it before. Okay, and so the num rows, we change this because it's just the chunk size. Oh, except +2, of course. And then I guess we'll also want to change this start row to subtract by 1 just to be offset. Okay, so the real column is this index, which is like the cell index, plus the start column. That's true. Because we already, the -1 is already taken care of up here. The only thing we need to add is cell. Hey Ice Boy, how you doing tonight? So is chunk neighbor, we just need to set this if index is on the first row or the first column or the last row and last column. So if index figure out the best way to do this. I guess the easiest way would just be to have cell column and cell row. Oh, this should be divided. Okay, good to hear. Yeah, I'm doing pretty good, except a little cold. But I'll warm up, I'm sure. Oh, and I also got your message on Discord, and I'll link you a design document tonight after the stream. Or a template, I should say. So this is the chunk neighbor if cell column is 0 or cell column is of columns -1 or cell row is 0 or cell row is number of rows -1. So basically, if it's the first or last column or the first or last row. First or last column or row. I should change this from real to like board column. Okay, so I think that's about it that I need to do here. Everything else just kind of takes care of itself. Oh, I see, because I add 1 because that's to change from the column to the neighbor. But yeah, this is actually a little different now. to transform from the cell to from the real columns and rows, I actually need to subtract the start column instead of just adding one. Okay, and that should be it. So I have the real here already. Didn't even use the cell indexes. Alright, I think we're done with that. Now here in the graphics mesh, get rid of that. Then we just will pass the mesh in here. Guess we'll just go ahead and set it. And I don't need to really change anything else. That was a usefulness of using the blueprint. So here I also pass the mesh and also the list of triangle owners, what is that value? Just a simple integer list. I won't create that there. Not supposed to be capitalized. And I think that will take care of that. Open up Unity and see if there's any more errors. Graphics mesh. Alright, so we need to figure out how we'll expose this to the rest of the game. We have a number of chunks. Yeah, but first I need to figure out how I want to deal with unused chunks. From int I equals number of chunks, I less, and active chunks, then this means we basically need to clear a certain amount. Be simple. Let's actually pass the index instead of the chunk variable. Okay. Oh, that's static for some reason. So we just need to clear these extra chunks. Then set the number of active chunks to the current number that we created in here. Now we've done that. Delete that one line. So here, instead of returning the size of the list, we'd actually turn that variable. Okay, and then we've got to convert this into a list of function. Just return chunks dot graphics mesh, and then we'll do the same thing for the collision mesh. Get owner block for triangle. Guess we'll also need to pass a chunk in here. How do I spell it? Simple. Okay, so any other errors? Oh well, yeah, because the mouse raycaster now is not going to know what chunk the terrain is in. How will we figure that out? Probably, I guess we're going to need to store the chunk index in the actual object somehow. Well, not somehow, I know how to do it, but... So where do we actually create the collision object? That's not it. Block collider? Oh yeah, this is not used anymore. Let's mark it as obsolete instead of deleting it right now. Oh, I see. So we don't actually have anything that creates these, they're just already made in the game. Okay, that's not gonna work. Play link in here. This was the class I was looking for, I think. But it's going to need to, like right now it just gets these terrain and colliders. But oh, I see. That's kind of strange. I guess it works, but we're going to need to be able to create these objects during runtime so we can have multiples. Okay. Yeah, so right now that says it's right at startup, but we're going to need to wait until we know how many chunks there are. So we'll need to do that on this terrain mesh change class, or message. Why we need that? I think right now it is called here. Yeah, it's kind of a hacky way because message I think is meant to be temporary, so I'm going to try and get rid of it here. Let's change this to set up meshes. Okay, and yeah, this will be done. So we'll just have a class here, let chunk, and then we'll have a terrain or mesh filter for the graphics and mesh collider for the collider. Then we're going to need to attach some other object to this mesh collider class that will have the chunk index on it. I'll make that when we get to it. But we will still have a reference to the terrain mesh. I I've gotten rid of that. Okay, so for int chunk 0 I less, or wait, not I, C less than terrain, number of chunks. We'll probably also need to know like the offset in the world from each chunk. I'll go with that in just a second. Let's just go ahead and get it. Vector 3 position is train get chunk position, and I'll just generate some dummy method. We'll take care of that later. I'll need this private. Okay, so if let's chunks count, or if C is greater than chunks count, or equal, actually greater than or equal, then we'll need to create a new object. Let's see. So basically we'll do like this, but so there's two ways. We could either have a prefab that creates these objects for us, or we could just create them here in code, and I think they're going to be pretty simple, so well, I don't know, maybe a prefab would be easier. Okay, we don't really have, but we have this, and basically I'm just going to, we have to do one at a time. This will be the visible train mesh, and then this will be collision terrain mesh. Okay, and then we need to add our new class here. Oh, I see. It might not even let us add this before all these errors are fixed, but the train goes in here. This will be, let's just say, call it terrain collider chunk. Fine. And this needs to be public since it's going to be attached to a mono behavior. Nope, we don't need that actually. And the only thing this is going to have is just a link to the chunk index. Super simple. And will it let me add that now? Yeah, I don't think it'll show up there until I fix these other errors, so let's work on that for now. But we know that class will be in here. I guess we should keep a reference to it. Let's just call this chunk memory. This will be the graphics object. Now we're going to need public references to the prefabs. Or not public, they just need to be serialized so they'll show up in the Unity editor. So this is the visible mesh fab. And collision mesh. I need to spell collision. mesh, prefab. That's good to go. So in order to instantiate a prefab, which is basically just Unity speak for copying a game object that's in memory, you call this instantiate our method, and that's really all you have to do right there. We'll go ahead and pass the parent, which we want to be ourself, or rather our transform. Then we want it to instantiate in world space, and then we'll send a little different. I want to go ahead and set its position. Well, actually, there's no reason to do that because we'll need to set the position whether we create a new object or just are we using a cached one, so I'll wait on that. Then we have the graphics, which we can just get from here. Get component, mesh filter. Okay, and so now we'll have another game object for the collision object, and again we'll just instantiate it. Set ourselves as a parent, and then we'll have the collider, which we'll get the same way. We'll just get the component off of the collision object. I don't know why I keep spelling. That's even weird. It's Caldeon. Collision. Get component. This is mesh collider. And then we need to get that new object I just had, or I just created, the I'm calling the chunk memory. Can't spell collision tonight. Get component. Chunk. There we go. And if we don't have to create it ourselves, then we can just set this chunk. Chunks that's already been made. And now we're ready to set values down here. Chunk, graphics, transform, position is position, and want to set its shared mesh, I think is correct. Shared mesh to the terrain, get graphics mesh for this chunk. And then we'll also want to update the position and mesh of the collider mesh. Get position mesh. And then finally, in the chunk memory, we'll just want to set the value of chunk indexed e. That's it. So here we actually won't do anything except get the terrain object and subscribe to the message. And the mouse pick arraycaster. Here, you still need to call this, but then we'll need to call the hit, or not call, but get that chunk index from the collider. So they hit collider, get component, chunk, guess it's terrain, isn't it? There we go. That chunk index. Up a bit. That looks good to me. So on the collider, we're just getting this component of the terrain collider chunk, so we can get the chunk index from that. And then we'll send the triangle index to the terrain class. And from there, it will be able to give us the selected block owner, like we used to do. I think that will be everything we have to update for this. Let's let Unity recompile. I need to add that new class. Don't need these anymore, so I'll delete them. Then we give a reference to these new prefabs into the Unity object there. I think we're good to go. So let's test it and see. Okay, something wrong. Oh, I bet the chunks list is null because I always forget to create lists. This chunks list, and I probably should do the same thing in the display link here. Alright, let's try it one more time. Not set to an instance. Let's look at that. Surface prototype. What is the deal with that? Maybe this is chunk neighbor. Not set correctly. Let me see. Okay, well actually, first of all, let's before we get too complicated, let's just go back into the map generation and make this a 4x4. Well actually an easier way would be just to make the chunk size 8, that way we won't have to change that. So we'll just have one chunk in the map, and that way we won't have to worry about the borders, and we can just test it until that works, and then we'll get more complicated. Interesting, so no errors, but also no chunks. Guess we should print these out maybe. Screen, format, chunks, columns, rows. So let's see what this gives us. It probably will say 000 for some reason, and that means I got the math wrong somewhere. I'm gonna need to zoom back up here and try and find that. Okay, so chunks. No, there's one chunk. So okay, so that means either this method's not being called, or the meshes are, or my logic here is wrong. Let's look. Do this. Debug log. Set up brain meshes. I also really need to try to get in the habit of commenting out these debug logs after I'm done with them, because I have so many debug logs. And until I can get a better way to manage them, we need to try and keep all these messages in check. Like I have a bunch of these messages which are just state changes, and I hesitate to change them because, or to remove them because they are very useful for debugging. But we probably don't need these script ones anymore. I don't know. So it looks like yeah, that message was never called. Let's clean up the top here. Train mesh change, when is this called, if ever? Modification watcher. Okay, this tests removing a block. Wait. Is this ever created, I wonder? Like, dig back through my code. Okay, so it do that. I guess this also needs to be called when the train is first loaded. I think that's what that realize map function is supposed to do. Not sure if there's a better way to handle it. I don't know. For now, we'll just stick with it. We can always change it later. But I think it's a better idea to have this class call or watch this realize map message rather than something else. Sorry if you can hear my dog. I don't know what she's barking at. Probably just playing with my cat, actually. Okay, so a lot of these classes are actually obsolete now. But it'll be fine. That's just something we need to keep an eye on. Okay, requested feature is not implemented. Oh right, I never created this or filled in the logic for this function. Alright, so okay, well it's not that difficult. So we're going to need to know the number of rows. Maybe I should just have another class that will do, or another function that will give me this information so I don't have to copy the code. Private void. Sense. So chunk rows equals chunk rows. Like that. And so the column is chunk mod chunk rows, of course. Okay, so now we also need to know well, we know the number of blocks in a chunk. That's just the chunk size. So the vector origin. Oh, I can maybe do it like this. X math world X position, and the column is just a chunk column times the chunk size, and then the row again is the same thing. And the layer is just 0. So now we just need to give it the metrics. I think that's it. Okay, so let's try to play it. And of course, right now we only have one chunk. Pretty simple. But if it spawns on the map, we know we've done something right. Which it does. And it looks good. I would like to name these visible and collision meshes to something more useful. Which we got here. Just be the graphics object. Name is brain. Oh no, let's do format to be a little cleaner. Visible. The chunk plus 1, just so that it'll be 1 base instead of 0 based. And then the train slider. And now instead of just having the prefab names there, it should have an actual useful name that will know which chunk those meshes belong to. Right, and right now there's only one. And I guess I should make sure that the mouse picking is still fine. And it looks good. Start here, 0, 1, 2. And then if we go up, it should go... Oh, actually, it's that way, plus 8. We have a whole layer here, so yeah. Looks good. So if we break the chunk size into 4, that means that the map will now have 4 chunks, and this is where the new code comes into play. So let's see. There's 2 things I'm worried about here. One, that everything is positioned right. Well, it doesn't even get this far. And then also that there's no overlapping or doubly created cells, which we'll need to test for. Okay, so something... Okay, maybe there's some problem. It looks through here. Why would this would only be null if it was not like an invalid cell. Okay, prototype. Yeah, so it's still... I wonder what's going on there. I guess this code is not working some reason. Okay, I think I just need to print out every cell. And we'll try and look and see if there's any unexpected values here. So first we'll get the chunk index, and then cell index. And the board position. I think that's all we'll need. This chunk. That was right. Chunk index, then cell index. Called index, that's fine. And then the cell surface block. I guess I should also see if it neighbor. No, I think I'll name this. In fact, let's just call it is in bound. And I'll just flip this around so that it's false. And then here, go to that, and also in the collision mesh. They just basically flip the value of that boolean just because I think it makes more sense. Right. Now when we play the game, it should give us a whole bunch of logs that will, and maybe we can see if there's some value that doesn't make sense. I guess I should have seen like maybe what value is actually throwing the error there, but okay, so right off the bat I can tell this inbounds doesn't make much sense because the layers are -1. Cell index. Right at the top. I mean, we kind of already know the first one works, but let's move to the second chunk now. Yes, this is out of bounds because the first column that should be inbounds for this chunk should be to column 4. But still, yeah, this is still the first row, so that's fine. All false. So this one should be inbounds. So far, it's looking good. Before and then false, false. Yeah, so this one looks fine. Let's go to chunk 2. Can the column... Wait, the column here should be 0. Yeah, it's like... Okay, so I did the math wrong. Column. Oh, right, because, yeah, I didn't take into account the index at all? Oh, yeah, I did, actually. Or the chunk index I didn't take into account. Oh, that's what this was supposed to do. Oh, yeah, this doesn't make much sense, does it? Yeah, so first, we know the layer size, and I'm just dividing this by chunk size, which gives me the number of cells. I don't know if this gives me anything useful, actually. Number of chunk columns should actually be the row size. Divided by the chunk size. Okay. Let's see if that makes any sense now. Alright. Well, it's somewhere. Or it's something, I should say. What's out of range? It won't take me there. Okay, so yeah, there's still some issues. Not gonna let me play, is it? Seems that at some points doesn't like the mouse picking. Oh yeah, I think it's if we go to the other chunks, maybe. Problem is, these other chunks have no... That's fine, we can just look around in the editor. I guess the first problem is they're way too far, but we can see that they're still kind of connected. Like, it's not creating extra... Oh wait, no, these should... I think everything should be created there, so I'll need to go back, fix that. Kind of hard to tell until everything is next to each other. I'm surprised that the positions are so messed up. Oh, that's weird. The collider... big. Okay, so obviously there's a problem there. Visible meshes makes sense. I bet that this is just that from the... Probably the collider generator doesn't clear all the arrays when it starts over. So, yeah, it doesn't clear the triangles or the vertices. It's important to do. And I can go ahead and clear out some of these other data arrays. Right there. The owners we won't clear out because they need to be passed on. Okay, so that should fix the problem with the collision, and maybe that would maybe that's also what was wrong with the mouse picking. Effect. Now these make sense at least. And if I try to do mouse picking, does it throw an error? No. That's too far, actually. And they make sense. So I think that the mouse picking is working fine. Can I reach over now? Really need to update this camera. But yeah, it's all good. So why are they so far apart? Starts at 13 and it needs to go... Oh, should they all just be at 0? Oh, yeah, that makes sense because the vertices are placed in world space already. So this transform can just be at 0. Yeah, that was kind of silly of me, actually. If that doesn't make sense, when we create these center points here, we just already create them in the absolute world space. That means that they'll already be placed in the correct position, and so we're basically doubling all the offsets if we then go and try and shift over the mesh chunk object itself. So really get rid of this code. I'm just going to delete it because there just won't be any reason for it. And likewise in the terrain mesh, I can get rid of that. I guess I can get rid of this little function. Alright, so hopefully everything will match up now. I think we might still have some holes. Oops, sorry, I bumped my mic. But let's see. Oh no, it's actually fine. So I noticed that it's not creating this edge right here. And I'm not sure if it's just an optical illusion. Why Unity is like hitting in such a weird way. Yeah, I don't know what is going on there. But I guess it doesn't matter because everything looks fine. Yeah, it's just a little strange because like this chunk here, it seems like it should go with this mesh instead of the other one. But does the same thing? Same thing I think is happening down here. That's just the margins. I think it's just the way that I did the margins, so it's no big deal. And then on the collider we can see that there's a complete hexagon for each because it goes halfway down the margin. I'm just going to make sure there's no overlapping. I think it's created twice. Looks good to me. Wrong thing there. Alright. Okay, so we're done with this, and now, well, I guess we might try one other thing just for fun. Let's go ahead and grow the chunk size to the extreme and just have one cell per chunk. This really doesn't make much sense, but if this works, then we pretty much know that our chunk system is fine. I knew it was going to take a lot longer to load because it's a lot of extra work, and it just not it's pretty much worse in every respect because meshes can be a lot larger than this, and we're just creating a lot of useless Unity objects, but it looks like everything still works fine. Yeah, it's still picking the right blocks. Yeah, okay, that's fine. Okay, so let's just go back to 4. I think that's a good amount for now. Alright, we can mark that off the list. Okay, so now I want to do color maps and height maps. I wasn't sure which one to start on first. Basically, color maps is we're going to actually apply a texture to the terrain, and we'll blend the textures together. So for right now, where we blend green and gray, we'll be blending a rock and a grass texture. Which, by the way, note to self, I need to find a good one just for testing. But so that should make the game look a lot better. Bump maps, on the other hand, well, it's not technically a bump map, or I should say height map. A bump map is something different in graphics programming, but we're not going to be doing it. Basically, it's going to be a grayscale texture that mod authors can provide, and I'll be able to add extra vertices on the top of all these hexagons and basically do exactly what it sounds like. I create height on them. That way, like, I don't know, if we had dunes, you could have a big texture, which would be like a wavy texture or something. And then it would actually be carved out onto the surface. And the reason that I'm doing it with textures instead of letting the mod authors provide like a model is because I need to be able to smooth the heights of these hexagons with neighbors that might be different. And also I thought it might be nice to have like a giant feature that would be displayed over multiple blocks of the same type, and there's really only one way to do that. That's with these height maps, at least that I could think of. So I wasn't sure what to do next, but I think we'll do color maps first, because height maps is going to need me to create a whole bunch of extra geometry, and that will just make everything more complicated, so I'll put them off for a little bit. Alright, so there's this great website called Cat-like Coding, and I've kind of been using it to help make these hexagon maps. His project is a little different than ours, because I'm not going to worry so much about having like these roads and rivers and stuff. Mine is more, I don't know, I guess Minecraft-like instead of Civilization-like. But the way that they do these texture blending is pretty much exactly how we'll be doing it. And you can see, basically, we're going to be providing colors like we do now, except instead of the colors being rendered directly to the screen, the graphic shader will use them to know which colors to blend together. So like here, red will basically be the amount of texture 1 to use, and green is the amount of texture 2 to use, for example. And then down here he gets blue as well, and that would be a third texture. And this is the main reason why I wanted every triangle to only ever touch 3 different blocks, because we can pretty much only support, well, I guess we could support 4 textures with the alpha channel, but that's like the absolute maximum. So this is basically the idea that we'll be implementing in the next couple streams. This color thing should be pretty easy, but I'm going to need to research a bit about the shader because it's a bit complicated. So we'll probably be referring back to this tutorial quite a bit. Right, so let's get started. The cool thing about this is that the collision mesh basically doesn't need to know any of this information at all, so we're going to be working almost only in the graphics mesh. And again, we already have support for these colors. Alright, so let's see. But instead of, we won't need this prototype color. I guess before I start working on here, on this, we should go into the start working from mods up like I like to. Lost the mod folder. Oh, here. So in the block prototype, we won't need this color anymore. We'll need, what should I call it? I guess I could call it color map, but that's just a fancy name for a texture, so I'll just call it texture. And then while we're here, I'll go ahead and load up the height map. I just spell height. And so this is more than just like some metadata, so we're actually going to need to load these textures. And to do that, start on the, is it the mod? It's been a while since I've worked with this. Mod load manager, I think. Load block prototype is right here. Before we loaded the model, so again we'll just load this texture now. And the asset block is the type, texture, and we just need to provide some type of debug name. Texture. We don't really care what type it is at this point. Height map. And I guess for now I won't support passing in null for these. In the future, I guess if these are null, we could just use a plain white texture, but much bother at the moment. Okay, and now we go into this data class. Block prototype will just store both of the textures in here. That's texture 2. Okay, well this will not be final because in our shader we'll actually be using something called a texture array, but I'll just go ahead and put this in here for now. Height map. Lastly, go to the mod organizer, or asset organizer I should say. Here, and for now, okay, so we actually were trying to parse an HTML string. That's fine. I guess I'll copy that or comment those in case we need to use that later just to see how I did it. We have this register model class. I'm not sure. So actually, a bit more work that I know we'll be deleting later. I think I'll wait to do this actually because we're going to need to create that texture 2D array. But yeah, it's just not worth it right now. We won't need that. I'll leave this in here because that will be final. Okay, so basically now it's going to complain to us about the colors, but we're not going to use that anymore, so it's no big deal. Okay, so this will just be color red because this is the one and only texture. For these triangles, or the hexagons I should say. So we don't even need to have these values because my color is just red. And the neighbor color is green. And then the other color is blue. When we figure out how we'll actually, like you might be thinking, how do we actually tell the shader which texture to draw with just these? We'll get to that. That was actually pretty simple. I think the game will actually complain to me because I don't have any texture loaded. No value given for the dirt texture. Let's actually kind of want to just go through that anyway because I don't have a good texture to use for it right at the moment. As I know. So yeah, we'll just comment this out. I just want to test the colors I have. Okay, now it looks pretty crazy, but what we can tell what's going on is you can see the blending from red to green and then red, green, and blue here. It basically just the shader will use these colors to blend three textures, and at some point and in some way we'll tell the shader that the blue texture is, I don't know, grass, green texture is dirt, and the red texture is stone, for example. And from there it will be able to blend the colors seamlessly, or blend the texture seamlessly using the colors to know which one is where. Basically what this is doing. So we won't see these weird colors for much longer. I don't think we'll get to the shader part tonight. In fact, if I run out of things to do, I might have to end the stream because I'm exactly ready for it because I don't have any textures right at the moment, but let's do as much as we can. I think I can go ahead and create this texture array class. And unfortunately, well, I guess it doesn't matter for us, but you can't go into Unity and just say asset create texture array. It doesn't exist. So you have to do it in code, which I guess is fine for us because we would want to do everything at load time anyway. Alright, so now let's just add these back in. Now I'm probably going to have to comment them out again because we can't run the game yet. Alright, and let's see. Go back again to cat-like coding. You can see the code where he creates the array. And he's making like an editor wizard, but we don't need that because it's all created at runtime. Copy texture. Okay, so you basically create the array and then you use this graphics copy texture to copy your normal array of textures, which is different than a texture array, into the texture array. A little confusing, but the graphics card handles them differently. And using this texture array is a lot more efficient than using an array of textures. Kind of confusing, but that's just how it works. Alright, so let's get started on that. So here, the asset organizer will want to first of all register all the textures that we'll need in the array, and then pick out any duplicates, and then go ahead and create a texture array. I guess here instead, this is the mod, that one's fine. Instead of having the texture object right there, we'll actually want to have an index in the texture array. Let's call it the texture index, that's fine. And then in the game database, we'll actually have that texture array that we'll create. Where is that? Oh, in the wrong folder. So, texture array. And I'll just call this terrain textures. And I haven't been able to find like a really good upper limit on the number or the size of text or the amount of textures you can store in this array. And there probably is an upper limit, and that kind of would like determine the amount of terrain types you can have in the game. So I need to find that out. But unfortunately it's not anywhere simple. or it's not anywhere obvious that I've seen. Let's look at, have a little note here. The maximum textures in texture 2, right? Small. Because if so, then we'll need to like investigate having multiple arrays. Don't want to save that. And again, that might not even work because probably there's a maximum amount of texture 2D arrays that you can have active in a shader at one time. So we're going to hit an upper limit at some point. I guess we just need to decide what that limit should be and then let mod authors know. Alright, so we'll get back to that. The asset organizer. This class is like super big. I feel like we should try to separate this code out. Because really, it doesn't need all this information. The only thing, like this whole do organize pretty much only uses this loaded variable, and all the rest of it, I guess it does use a database log4. Oh, that. Okay, well, I guess in a time like the present, let's just have another object. Don't even have to make it like completely decoupled, and we can just call it the block prototype organizer. Alright, and yeah, we'll just have the asset organizer create this object, and then we can pull out the relevant functions and put them in here. But it will still need these certain things like the, where is it? This is the problem, this class is way too big. Get Lua function and the register model, but I guess we can also pull those out into separate classes at some point. But we'll come back to that as needed. So really this just needs the loaded assets and the game database. Pull out these two functions. Okay. To create private variables, or I should say instance variables for database and the loaded assets. Okay. Block prototype map. Instead of being past this, how about this is just something that we actually populate? So I'll just name this the name map. So let's just call this organize. Now we don't have to pass that. And this will need to be exposed for other classes to use. name map now. Alright. Now if I delete this stuff, okay, so this creates an empty one. I can go ahead this into this class as well. And this is just creating a dummy block prototype here for empty brain. Okay, so block type organizer. And we'll just call blocks organize. And anything that needs this prototype map, we can pass the blocks to it. And I can also move that into here. Nothing else need the name map? Okay. That's fine, it's available if something needs it. So we can see that's already cleaned up the asset organizer a lot. I won't go through and do the rest right now, we'll just do it as needed. Okay. So this was just something useful in case we need to use colors again. Guess I'll put this out here. Okay, so we're going to need, like I said, a way to test the number, or we want to get rid of duplicate textures in case two brains use the same texture, which could happen. And I guess, although it's not completely foolproof, we'll just use the name of the texture. Test for duplicates. Because at least they'd be the same file. Let's see. So to use the register model class to as a pattern to see how I should try to register a Unity asset. And we'll just say, we'll register, this will be just get texture. Okay, we won't care about the map right now. Don't even need to add that. Also, actually want to try and cast it to a texture 2D. Will it not let me do that? Oh, right. That. Change this to texture. So if this is null, then that means we expected a texture. But we got something else. Turn it. So the height map is simple, so we can just do logic data, height map equals get texture mod data height map. That's taken care of. Texture 2D. This will just be the I guess I'll just call it texture. Get texture, data, texture. Oh, I guess I don't need to do that actually because we want to test this texture map. So if text map contains key mod data texture, and again this string is like the path to this texture file, so that's gonna be how we'll try to detect duplicates. If there's no way, I don't think that we can really test if two textures are duplicates besides like checking every pixel, and that's kind of too much trouble. So I really don't need to store that. All I have to do is insert it into the texture map. Although I need to know the index of it because we're going to need to create the texture array. So yeah, I need to be a little more complicated here. I think I can make this a struct. And public int index. Although no, oh wait, this isn't a key, so this is fine. I was gonna say using a structure in a dictionary can cause problems, but that's only if it's the key. So it's fine if it's the value. And we'll need to keep track of the number of textures so far. This will be texture layer. Texture equals get texture. X textures. Then we just need to increment that. Although I'm just gonna make this a class so we won't have any trouble. Working with structures is just prone to bugs. So we actually will need to get the texture layer here because we need to know the index even if we don't. Create it right here. So this should be our good old try get value that I use all the time. And if it's false, then we'll create it. And then we just got to insert it into the map there. And then, excuse me, the logic data, we can finally add the texture index. That's layer index. Now all we have to do is create the texture array. So if some textures greater than 0, I guess we'd want to throw some error if there's no textures. But that would probably be caught there. Then we want to create the array. I guess we'll get to. We're working on color maps right now, so create texture to array. Okay, and then we'll want to somehow hook up texture data into the shader. I guess will entail like creating the actual shader. And that's about it. Look at like coding do it, I'm just curious now. So they have the texture array, then the shader. So you apply the array, that's the easy part. We'll need to play around with it a bit. So this is a part I'm not sure how you would do it. Excuse me, how you do it. You basically need to pass some of this extra information into the shader. Types. I don't know, not just some simple thing. It goes on and on. I'll look into it obviously before next stream. But tomorrow I probably won't be able to stream because I have a dentist appointment and nothing major, but I probably will need to make up for work during my normal stream time because it is obviously during when I work. But I'll definitely be back Friday and hopefully we can knock this out and move on to height maps next week. It feels good. I think we're getting on to. I can see the light at the tunnel at the end of the tunnel for these for the terrain mesh, and finally starting to get the game to actually look good. Soon I'll get back to gameplay. I think I want to still take a bit more detour into graphics, and we'll try and make some animated characters, and then we'll get back into doing some more ability actions. And yeah, so still quite a long way to go on this game. We'll keep working on it for a bit and maybe take a break later, but getting way too far ahead of myself. Anyway, again, thanks everybody for coming and watching. I do appreciate it. I'll be back for sure on Friday, maybe tomorrow, we'll see. But if you missed any of this stream or any previous one, I upload everything to YouTube, so feel free to go check that out. If you want to be notified when I go live next, feel free to follow me on Twitter or here on Twitch. I also have a Discord channel if you'd like to chat with me during the day, and other viewers too. We'd appreciate you there. Oh yeah, and then if you would like to get links to any of those places, just type !Discord or YouTube into chat or check out my video description. And I guess that's it for me for tonight. Thanks again everybody for coming out and watching, and I hope you have a great night. Alright, bye bye.